Welcome back to the History of Being Human. The Blackboard room is still under renovation, so I thought I'd come outside, do something a little different. Last time we talked about time, and that segued, for me anyway, into deja vu. In David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, we have the following lines. We have all an experience of a feeling that comes over us occasionally, of what we are saying and doing having been said and done before in a remote time, of our having been surrounded dim ages ago by the same faces, objects, and circumstances, of our knowing perfectly what will be said next as if we suddenly remembered it. What he's describing is the phenomenon of deja vu. That's a French phrase which means already seen. It's a feeling that 2/3 of us, 66% of us, according to surveys, have had. I've done this before, I've been here before, I've seen this before, I've heard that before. And yet there's no way you could have been there or have heard that before. That's the feeling. And it doesn't matter which culture you're from. It's a truly cross-cultural, in other words, a human experience. And it can be so strong that your conviction that you have seen something, been somewhere, heard something before, can approach dead certainty. You know you've been there before. You can't quite place it. And that, of course, can cause you to question your entire construct of how reality works. One of the hallmarks of deja vu. Is time illusory? Do we live all moments of our life simultaneously and catch input non-sequentially? Kind of like the Vonnegut story of Billy Pilgrim being unstuck in time. Are there multiple universes and we catch a glimpse of another universe through a mental wormhole of some sort? Is deja vu evidence of reincarnation, that we've lived our lives before and we're seeing into a past existence? Or, as some believe, a psychic connection with another mind, a form of inter-subjectivity that proves we're connected in ways as sentient beings that we don't fully understand. They can even make us wonder if our lives are predetermined, if our sense of free will is completely illusory. Or, on the other hand, they might be, as most psychologists believe, a simple cognitive glitch, a kink in our neural wiring, where the sensation of recognition is paired inappropriately with a completely novel stimulus. We see or hear or feel something we've never felt before, and yet we think we have. It serves no constructive purpose that anyone can identify. Studies have shown, in fact, that even when there's a feeling that you've been somewhere before, when it's so strong that you think you know the exact next thing that's going to happen, or what you should do next, or which path you should take, that is also illusory. You don't do any better than chance in predicting what will occur next, where you should go next, what you should do next. So in other words, deja vu has not been shown to be a form of precognition. The only thing it seems to cause us is hesitation, if not outright shock, because sometimes it's so strong. And yet you know your brain is telling you something that can't be happening. You can't have been here before. You can't have felt that before. Deja vu can take many forms, that sensation. In fact, in his 1981 doctoral thesis, the South African neuropsychiatrist Vernon Nepi, who is now the director of the Pacific Neuropsychiatric Institute in Seattle, listed 21 variants of deja vu. Already lived, already visited, already read, already dreamed, already felt. It can take many forms, and because of all the ways we can experience deja vu, Nepi proposed that we stop calling it deja vu, and we just say we've already experienced something. Deja experimente in my bad French. The most common forms of deja vu are the sense of having been there before and the sense of having done something before. For most people, these experiences come sporadically. They're totally unpredictable. You can't reproduce them at will. Some people seem to have them almost all the time, whereas other people go their entire lives never having this experience. They probably wonder what we're talking about. They tend to be more frequent and intense when you're young. As you get older, they not only get less frequent, they're less intense. 15 to 25 years old seems to be that golden time. And that makes some people wonder if deja vu is connected to brain development. We know now that the brain isn't fully formed until at least 25, probably a lot older. And so these could be the experiences of a developing brain. Deja vu also doesn't last very long. And since it's like a dream, you can't reproduce it in a laboratory, so it's very difficult to study. Deja vu is most common among people with a higher education, higher socioeconomic class, people who watch more movies, and people who travel more often. And of course that makes sense. If deja vu is about familiarity, then having been and seen more things would make it more likely to occur. Travel is most common among those with higher incomes. Traveling exposes you to more locations, and so you may think you're familiar with a similar location. If you've seen it in a movie before, you're likely to think I've been here before. I just can't quite place where. Studies have also shown that deja vu experiences are more common in people who are under pressure or fatigue. So if it's deja vu you want, make sure you're young, you make lots of money, you travel all over the world, and you need to be as stressed and fatigued as possible. Coming back to studies, it's tough to study deja vu. You can't predict when they're going to happen, and yet there is a certain form of epilepsy where there is an aura before the seizure, which is a sensation of deja vu. People who experience these auras have a strong sense of deja vu right before they have a seizure, and they make excellent study subjects. And by studying these subjects, they found that the deja vu sensation occurs simultaneously with the lighting up of a certain area of the brain called the medial temporal lobe, which has to do with memory. That's what's activated during these deja vu experiences. In the medial temporal lobe of the brain sits the rhinal cortex. The rhinal cortex helps us recognize something that's familiar, and close by that is the hippocampus, which is responsible for storing new memories. And not far away from the hippocampus and the rhinal cortex is the amygdala. And as we know, emotion is related to memory storage and retrieval. Researchers can send an electrical current into the medial temporal region of the brain and trigger a deja vu experience. So the impulse goes to the rhinal cortex, but all of those associated areas, the hippocampus, the amygdala, the rhinal cortex, all of them are active during a deja vu episode. Patients with these triggered deja vu experiences report two different kinds of experiences. One is the common feeling of deja vu, but the other is a much more vivid, a much more complete, a much more intense feeling of having lived through what you're living through right then at that moment. And that's known as deja vu, or already lived. Scientists posit that one is simply farther along the continuum of deja vu than the other. Everything from a slight sense of familiarity to an absolute conviction that you have been and done and seen everything that you're living through before can be on this continuum. There are actually researchers trying to get useful information out of deja vu. For one is, what is its adaptive value? Why do we have feelings of deja vu? One possibility is being explored by Cleary at Colorado State University. Cleary is trying to find some adaptive value, maybe even predictive value of deja vu. And the theory behind Cleary's work is, put objects in a certain spatial arrangement, say a rug, potted plants, and pictures on a wall, all in one spatial arrangement. Then change the objects, but keep the same spatial arrangement. So instead of a rug, you may have a pool. Instead of potted plants, you may have statues. Instead of pictures on the wall, you may have light sconces. Same configuration, different objects. And the thought is that when you encounter a completely novel scene with the same spatial arrangement as another scene you've been in, it may give you some clue about how best to negotiate or navigate that situation or that spatial arrangement. Some of the research into deja vu, frankly, I have to admit, is not very satisfying to me. It seems to me that what they're researching is familiarity. Well, familiarity is not deja vu. Deja vu is a much more comprehensive, complete feeling of having actually been somewhere before, of having done something before. And not only is it more intense, it's qualitatively different in some ways than the actual feeling of having done something before that we have done before. It's a different feeling. And so for now, to me, deja vu remains a bit of a mystery. Can I understand it in terms of areas of the brain firing? Absolutely. But do I understand why we have it, what it might mean, or if there's any use for it, or to use the words of a biologist, any adaptive value? I have no idea.